Rabbi Ariel Rackovsky is rabbi of congregation Shaare Tefilla in Dallas, Texas. Rabbi Rackovsky and I go all the way back to Rochester, New York, where, growing up, we attended the same shul together, congregation Beth Hakneses Hachodosh, BHH, or St. Regis, as some irreverently called it, after the street on which it was situated. Several decades later, we caught up as adults and reminisced about some of our fondest memories, about the shul, its spiritual leader at the time, Rabbi Aryeh Sokoloff, and the unique cast of characters and hidden tzaddikim that every shul seems to possess. Rabbi Rackovsky and I discussed the value of collaboration when it comes to preparing a drasha, and his process for developing ideas with some of the best rabbinical minds in the field today. We also talk about the two models of drasha, content-based or context-based. You'll discover some great go-to resources for finding divrei Torah and stories. Rabbi Rackovsky's unique approach to his Ne'ilah sermon. We discuss techniques for securing audience attention right at the start of the drasha, and I discovered a storytelling method that Rabbi Rackovsky learned from Rabbi Ilan Feldman in Atlanta, Georgia. Last but not least, Rabbi Rackovsky shares with us some of his influences and mentors that have shaped his speaking style into what it is today. I'm sure you'll learn a lot and enjoy this interview as much as I did. Now, without further ado, here is my conversation with Rabbi Ariel Rackovsky.
So, of course, I remember you I grew up going to Regis.
There's like these little flashbulb memories, I remember this fellow Michal.
Michal
yeah, I remember him.
He was a tzaddik in many ways, and a Baal Yisurin.
And I ran into Dov Nimchinsky, and
sure.
I was over there at the time. Yeah, a bunch of other people. And so,
I used to sit next to him in Shul, and he had every time he had like these shtick that he would do. Every time they would announce the molad, he would turn to me and say, "Be there."
Right. So he was always known as this like gruff guy. Like he was like very gruff in yeshiva. And as I remember, he had on his shtender in the yeshiva, there was a sign that he bought. It said, "Beware of the dog." And he had crossed out the G and put a V there. I did a little bit of research before speaking to you last night, and I went through some of your drashas. And man, I am a fan. I have to say, I read the Shabbos Rosh Hashanah drasha, which was unbelievable. I was so blown away by it. Yeah.
Thank you.
So maybe let's use that as a springboard to talk a little bit about the process and all that. So when does the Rosh Hashanah drasha begin in preparation?
So first of all, I need to, first of all, to bring redemption to the world, I need to stress that I often work on my drashas with other people, meaning we bounce ideas off of one another and then write it up in our own words. Won't necessarily exactly go in the same direction, but if I find that it helps to have a chavrusa. For many years, that was Rabbi Judah Dardick, who was the rabbi in Oakland. Maybe you knew him or remember him from the Bay Area.
Yeah, I've met him.
Oh, you met him. Okay, so before he made Aliyah, he was my like drasha chavrusa, and then I started working with Rabbi Shannon Gelman in Skokie. And he's even before this, he was a very dear friend of mine, a former roommate of mine, and to this day we bounce ideas, we develop them together, and then we write it up in our own voices. But having said that, let's talk about Rosh Hashanah.
When you collaborate, are you all working on each other's drashas? Or are you all working on the same theme of drasha and you give it in your own way?
Sometimes it's one and sometimes it's the other. It might be that I have to address a certain issue and that I need to go in a certain direction, and therefore I will run what I'm saying by him and see what he thinks of this pathway that I'm going on, or the way that I'm going to treat it. Or the reverse, and sometimes we'll have just a text that we think really speaks to us, or something that we kind of want to delve deeper in, and we'll try and hammer it out together, like a real chavrusa, meaning like he'll say something, I'll say, that's ridiculous, and it's not going anywhere. You shouldn't do that. Or he'll say this thing with you, you are falling into this is going to sound trite if you go this way. Like it really sharpening each other. I think that it's really important for rabbis who are preparing speeches to try not to do it in a vacuum. Have someone that they can bounce it off of. Sometimes it's even my wife. Like when I have the final product and she'll ask me what I'm speaking about, and I'll tell her, and she'll say, oh, that's interesting. Or she'll say, really? Like maybe don't. And that will send me to the drawing board or, so it is, I think it's a good idea to have somebody that you have someone, a colleague that you can that you can talk about these things with. I think that I could do this by myself, right? Both of us, I think, are good enough that we can do this on our own. I know that he is, and I hope that I am. But I think that it's often better when we work together. We don't do it every single week. But often enough.
So one of you will come with a source, and then you'll explore that together, like quote unquote the chavrusa, and try to develop it, flesh it out, see where it goes.
Right, that's right. I think that's usually what happens. And it's not one person or another person who is the bringer usually of this. So it's it develops when it develops in different directions. I do this with my Shabbos Shuva and Shabbos Hagadol drashas also, but not with even before I was working with Rabbi Yekelman, I was working with Rabbi Ben Skydel from Orach Chaim in Manhattan, and there it's really has a totally different style than I do. And it's really, in that case, we really go through the sources and bat ideas back and forth, and it's a very different model, which we could talk about if you want later on. But it's the same kind of idea there. So yeah. So as far as like a weekly drasha. The other thing that I like to do, at least, is take parts of the parsha that nobody speaks about, psukim that I think get ignored, parts of the parsha that no one talks about, the haftarah. It's okay to give a drasha about the haftarah from time to time, or something that is not actually related to the parsha at all. A good. I did this actually during Elul. Last year, not this past Elul, but a year and a half ago, I did a series of drashas based on the different sections of the Musaf of Rosh Hashanah, 3 drashas. And this was based on a challenge that was issued to me by a dear friend of mine who is a cantor in Montreal named Gideon Zellermeyer, an outstanding chazan and a good friend. And he once said to me, why don't rabbis teach about the Siddur? And why don't they preach about the Siddur? And I said, challenge accepted. And that's what I did during Elul. And I didn't go necessarily pasuk by pasuk in Malchios and Shabbos, and I tried not to do it in a way that will take up ideas that I could use for Rosh Hashanah and use them already in Elul. But I think that it was meaningful. People felt like it enhanced their davening on Rosh Hashanah when they had some of the ideas that I talked about already in advance of it. I also published them in a pamphlet that I give out on Rosh Hashanah as well, so people had it for reference. This is a thing that I have seen in churches, some of the mega churches, lahavdil, the senior pastor or the preaching pastor will advertise a sermon series, and there that brings people in. The pastor is going to be talking about this subject for the next 6 weeks, and he has already the titles. So I'm not always that organized, but that's what I did then. And I think it's also an interesting thing to do if you can do it. I think it's It's an interesting idea. And so I advertised a 3-part sermon series. I titled it "The King is in the Field," and a 3-part reflection on each one. One week was Malchut, 1 week was Zichronos, 1 week was Shovros, and people loved it. As far as the one for this past Rosh Hashanah, what was the thing that spurred me to talk about that subject? I think it was just the confluence. The last time that happened was 3 years ago. It was during COVID, and that was, everybody had to rejigger their speeches and give very short ones. And I actually sent a written one out to the Shul, which I think maybe, I don't know how many people read, but it wasn't the one I delivered in Shul. I needed that. So this was my opportunity. I felt like that there's something really powerful about the imagery of Rosh Hashanah and Shabbos coinciding and the shofar being silent for one day. There's nothing original about that necessarily. And I'm sure that plenty of rabbis spoke about it. I know that plenty of rabbis spoke about it because Shanan is not the only rabbi that I speak with. And each one took it in a different direction. But the idea of these 2 things, 2 days representing 2 different modalities, like the shofar, the Shabbos moments and the shofar moments, that was something that had been percolating in my mind. It had been percolating in my mind because I'd been thinking about it almost obsessively, and it came to me, but also because of what you see as a rabbi. You see people making gradual changes in their lives or not. And you see people being faced with dramatic changes in their circumstances that necessitate a change in their lives, or that force change in their lives upon them. So just my experience is what led me to kind of talk about this. And if I say so myself, many people came to me and told me how impactful they felt it was, or how they felt it described their situation.
So let me ask you, when you say that sometimes you come to your session, your Drasha session with your chavrusa, you have an agenda in mind. So meaning you have a message that people need to hear.
And I'm sure that other rabbis have told you this. When you prepare a drasha and you know what you want to say, then all you need to do is find the piece of Torah that you think will flesh out what you want to say. And you have to be intellectually honest and find out, is the piece of text that you're sharing to support this or to lead into this message, does it actually say that? I had this experience yesterday, in fact, where I was preparing. I'm speaking in Houston this Shabbos, Be'ezras Hashem, and I was looking through some materials that I had put together in a different year. And when I looked at it again, I realized that didn't really, the way I took that Ralbag, it was not actually what, on second glance, it wasn't really actually what the Ralbag was saying. It was close enough. I'm not trying to paint myself as being intellectually dishonest in any way. Just that what happened was that there was one line in the Ralbag that did say it, and I talked about the whole totality, and so you have to be careful not to try and shoehorn meaning into a place that it isn't found. But if you are looking for it, you will find it. So if you want to talk about, I don't know, if there is a social issue that you want to comment on, I guess different rabbis and different levels of courage or seniority will choose which battles they want to fight or to address. But then it's not so hard to find something in the parsha or some comment from a mefarish in the parsha that will say it, and you don't have to even find something in the parsha. If it's something, if you want, so for example, I think maybe it was 2 years ago during Elul, I decided that I wanted to address the issue of consistent kashrus observance during Elul. And I waited 7 years to give that drasha, but I felt like Elul is the right time, and it happened to be Parshas Re'eh, which was was easier, and so it didn't really take very much to find something and build upon it. The idea that maybe during Elul be more careful, more consistent, and even if that is not in the sphere of practical politics in your home, to completely change over to strict kosher observance forever, maybe for this month, and maybe just do something more than you are doing. Which in certain communities, that is, you're going out on a limb doing that, but okay. So it's not that hard to find a text that supports that. But I knew that I wanted to speak about it, and if I couldn't find something, then I would just talk about kashrus, right? I would just find, that's what I would discuss, because it's something that I wanted to talk about. Other times when there's nothing necessarily pressing that you feel you need to address, then you keep an open mind and look through the parsha, whether it is through Shnaya Mikra or through time. That I know that other rabbis have said that Shnaya Mikra is where their wheels are turning, or set aside time to really look not just through Chumash Rashi, but through Midrashim, through Mefarshim, and look in there and see what speaks to you, what's jumping out at you, and what you can do with it.
As a rabbi, what would you say the ratio is in terms of the types of drushas that you give?
I would say it's probably 75% of the time is parsha based. That's what I would say. Usually it's not occasion based, and occasion based also, meaning in terms of whether it's an event or an issue versus a Yom Tov. So yeah, mostly it's the first one. I think that what people lose sight of is that the rabbi's job, on top of everything else, or not on top of, but acharei kichlos hakol, it's his job to teach Torah, right? So there is nothing wrong. Sometimes it doesn't even have to have a message. It should try to extract something, but you're also teaching Torah. So sometimes I will, and I don't do this as often as I maybe should, I'll just take a midrash or take a text, and I'll hand out source sheets, and I'll open and I'll ask some questions, and there'll be a 15-minute discussion, like a parsha shiur. And then we daven musaf. I try and extract something meaningful, because people should go away with something, especially if you're opening the floor up to people, and they don't necessarily want to hear what other people have to say, and that's it. But I have done that in the past. It's your job. You have to teach Torah. Need to be able to make a birk. If this is the only Torah that they learned all day, or that they will learn all day, or even all week, then it has to justify a birkas Torah.
Right. So let me ask you. You mentioned in passing that churches, preachers, things like that. Do you draw inspiration from the way that their methodologies and the way that they attract their audiences and the way they engage their audiences?
I don't. I'll tell you. I enjoy watching them, but some of the things that they do, I don't feel like I can do. Like T.D. Jakes speaks for an hour and a half without notes, without a text. He has a very engaged crowd in the Black church tradition. He paces back and forth on the stage. He gets amens. He stops, and there's songs in the middle of his sermons. And by the time he's done, he's got a cardiovascular workout, and he is an unbelievable speaker. He's captivating. Are you familiar with him at all? He is.
No, I'm not.
Okay, he actually is here in Dallas. I'm trying to think of other and I'll say that some of these black preachers on their worst days with double pneumonia are better than the most eloquent white preachers. Not to draw any type of racial stereotypes, God forbid, because there are many very effective ones. But I can't do that. First of all, I tend to find that my style when I speak, I don't move around as much. I do have notes in front of me, as you see, and sometimes it's it's usually the text of the drasha, and it's just a very different crowd, But I do enjoy watching them. I find that even if I can't apply what they do, I learn from them. I also know enough to know when what they're doing is not compelling, and when they are losing the crowd, or let's say that they must be doing other things very well because their sermons are not amazing, or their crowd doesn't have very high standards and doesn't know any better.
So tell me about the notes. Clearly, you have the entire Drasha written out, published online. Is that written out beforehand or afterwards, or
beforehand? Just because afterwards, sometimes there have been times where I've written it out in outline form. Writing it up as in the full written version is probably a crutch, and I don't think that I need it, but it's comforting to have. And also, I send it out to people. I have a distribution list in advance. I send it out in advance of Shabbos, and then on Motzei Shabbos, I send the text out to the entire shul. Always. I started that during COVID, when I was only writing drashas and not giving them. And then when we had time limits, I was giving 2-minute drashas, but I would still write out full ones. And then when we went back to real drashas, I said, why should people lose out? They think that they'll get off easy by not being in shul. No, they're going to get the drasha too. So and there is value, I think, to what I believe enough in what I have to say that I am not ashamed of it being out there, and I don't and I think that the product is worthy of people's time investment. I don't do it for drushes that I give at bar mitzvahs, or under chuppahs. That's personal, and if you are my friend and you're on my distribution list, you don't know. You don't know Jake, the bar mitzvah boy, so it's not going to really matter to you all that much what Jake is like, even though I'm sure you would be very happy for Jake if you knew Jake, but it wouldn't really, it doesn't really resonate with you quite as much. That I'm doing. I don't do that with eulogies or with chuppah speeches, just because those are really more personal. I try not to look down at my notes too much. I try to know it well enough that I could give it without the notes, but I have them in front of me so that I can refer to them, especially if I have really good lines. I don't just mean like funny ones. I mean powerful phrases, things that I think drive home a point, that I spent a lot of time thinking about and formulating the idea on paper. I like to have it there so that I don't mess it up.
Let me ask you, how much inspiration, influence did you draw from your father?
So my father's not a rabbi, but my father is the son of a rabbi. And I would say that growing up, I knew what he liked. Meaning, I knew when the rabbi's drasha landed on Shabbos. Like I could tell. My rabbi growing up, and maybe you remember him, Rabbi Aryeh Sokoloff. I don't think that he's ever written down a single word that he has said in public in his life, but is an incredibly effective speaker because his heart was in every syllable that he said. And when he would give musar and when he would talk about communal matters, you knew that it was something that he cared about deeply, and he was impassioned. He would yell when he would get in a crescendo and work himself up, and then he would know how to modulate and then dial back down to the quiet afterwards. He was masterful at that, and I knew when his drashas land. I still remember some of his drashas, and I was a kid. I was not necessarily staying in shul for sermons, but I still remember some of them. My grandfather was a rabbi. I never really heard my grandfather speak except at my bar mitzvah. He spoke at my bar mitzvah, but he was a very much an old school orator, and it was a different time. But also, he was fighting different battles, I think, but that's the kind of but the memories of people talking about what he was like when he spoke left a powerful impression.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so back to Rosh Hashanah. So the Rosh Hashanah sermon you're giving, it's one of the highlights of the year in terms of the speaking slots.
Right.
When does preparation begin? When do you think about what you're going to talk about? Walk me through that process.
Preparation for Rosh Hashanah really begins in earnest after Tisha B'Av. How long after Tisha B'Av really depends on sometimes kind of the school year, the school calendar here. In Texas, school starts in mid-August. Sometimes that is a few days after Tisha B'Av, and sometimes that is, depending, Elul is not for another couple of weeks. So it's really, and I start ramping up, in Elul. But as far as really the ideas, I start brainstorming, unless something really comes to me earlier on. When you're looking for one thing for a drasha, for example, and you see something else and you tag it and perhaps even file it away, say this could be good. I have a file already now for Yom Noraim 5785, and if I see ideas, I'll put them there, so that when I refer to it at the beginning of Elul, I'll say, oh, that was a good idea, or actually that's not going to go anywhere, or how can I do something with this? You don't know what's going to be in the world at that time, so just file it away, and maybe there's something that could come of it. Mm-hmm. But really in earnest, starting right after Tisha B'Av and dialing up after El.
And that's when you're starting the Rosh Hashanah, the Shabbos Shuvah, the Yom Kippur, the Ne'ilah, like all of those.
Correct. So Ne'ilah is that's right. So Ne'ilah, I just tell stories. I tell a story before Ne'ilah, for maximum emotional effect. This year I told one that proved to be retroactively way more powerful after October 7th. And also Ne'ilah is one of the few the pre-Ne'ilah drashas, like one of the few times of the year that I reliably cry when I speak. And that always gets, and I daven Ne'ilah myself, so that always gets people like in the mood. You find the right. Some people, I've heard of people that give a shiur before Ne'ilah or that speak an hour before Ne'ilah. I don't understand this at all. You need 3 or 4 minutes, something powerful, and that's it. But as far as Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, yeah, I'm starting then really in earnest on Rosh Chodesh Elul. I happen to be fortunate. We have 2 minyanim in the shul, and I alternate between them. So I only have to prepare one drasha on Rosh Hashanah. um, which on the one hand is easier, but on the other hand, that means that's the drasha. So the Rabbi Emeritus speaks of the other minyan. So that's my drasha. So maybe there's a little bit more pressure on it. So I found Rosh Hashanah harder to prepare for than Yom Kippur in the past, for whatever reason.
So where do you go? Where are your resources? Your go-to resources for your story, for your even for Torah content. Where do you like to start?
Torah content, just you have to read a lot. It helps to have certain mefarshim that are your go-tos, even if it's not the same one all the time, but in different years, maybe you choose different ones. Every Friday night between Mincha Maariv, I teach a different mefaresh. Every year I choose a different one. This year I'm doing Emes LeYaakov, which is just wow. Yaakov, it was wow. So that's a great source. There are some great drush svarim. The one called the Darash Mordechai from Rav Mordechai Druk, the Shemen HaTov from Rabbi Bernard Dov Weinberger, Menachem Tzion from Rabbi Menachem Sachs. Those are great drush svarim. And then if you have your darshans like antenna honed, then there are lines in Mefarshim that are not necessarily drush lines, but are easily darshanable. That's what I thought was the genius of Rabbi Stavsky. Was that he was able to darshan things that were not necessarily meant as drush. He was able to take them and extract the homiletical purpose from them. And so if you have that on and you're looking through a farshim, you can find that. Especially there's such a wide for Yom Noraim, there's so much there. There's so many different sources for you to look at. You just decide. Am I going to the Hasidish sources? Am I going to the Musar literature? Am I going to straight text? And whichever one you decide, that's the one that you go to. As far as stories, I the only thing I can say is siyata dishmaya. Like I read a lot. I'm not necessarily an avid consumer of art scroll biographies. However, there are plenty of those that have good material in them, even if you're not using the entire thing. Vignettes that are worth that are meaningful. So I keep an eye out. I keep an eye out for that as well.
Right. One of the things that struck me about the Rosh Hashanah sermon was the opening, where you talk about a bunch of people huddled in a dark room, worried that someone might hear them. You really built up the tension that, maybe you'll think this is the Inquisition, maybe you'll think this is some type of shmad where you're not allowed to blow the shofar, and then you lay it on them that it's really, Shabbos, Rosh Hashanah, Yerushalayim, in the 1800s. And I thought that was great. Do you try to employ that method of building up tension in the beginning of every drasha to kind of
you have to. You have to start. Obviously, you have to start with something that draws people's attention, no question. But once you're drawing their attention, there are ways to really draw their attention. There are ways to elevate that as well, heightening the tension while drawing their attention. It kind of putting yourself in the middle of the story. That was something that I learned from Rabbi Ilan Feldman. He taught me. I was talking to him, and he said that you could tell a story about how. He would tell me a story about how he went to Buffalo on a mission of some kind. So the story itself, it's a complicated, long story, and it's an interesting story. But if you started, rather than saying, last week I went to Buffalo, say, there I was sitting on a park bench in Buffalo, New York. It's 25 degrees outside, and I am shivering. That is a totally different opening than the first one. And the first one is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It will draw people in. But the second kind will just have people on the edge of their seats. And that is, I think that's the difference. So I try and do that.
The idea, like starting in the middle.
Yeah, starting in the middle, or starting in the middle, or even if you're starting at the beginning of the story, kind of throwing you right into the story, or drop something in that will perk up their attention. So, for example, I once started a drasha with the phrase, "The following story is 100% true, and I can attest to that because I was present when it happened." And then I tell the story. The story didn't happen to me, but I was there when it happened. So people are now thinking, well, what kind of crazy story is he going to tell that he has to emphasize that the story is 100% true? It's like Dave Barry's line that he always uses, "I promise I'm not making this up," right? So now people are listening for that.
Yeah. I remember reading a quote from, I think it was Quentin Tarantino, the director, and he said, what I like to do in the beginning of my movies is throw a stick of dynamite in the laps of the audience. Just blow something up in their face, like you're just forced to deal with it, and then now you have everybody, and so.
Right.
So let me ask you maybe some areas where you would say, you've evolved obviously and matured as a speaker. What are some areas that you would still struggle with, that are still difficult for you?
Sure. I am not confident in my extemporaneous speaking. I do it often, and I think people enjoy it, but I'm not confident. I've seen other interviews that you have with other rabbis that they write everything out in terms of notes, and they are mostly just communicating with the audience, and I don't do that either. It's like at a Shalom Zachar or a Friday night. I never write out any of my Friday night drushes because I'm preparing them during Kabbalah Shabbos. Sometimes I have the best ideas then. The pressure seems to necessitate. It seems to really be good for creativity. But so either that, or I have the full thing written out in front of me, and I just find that I'm not that I could be more confident. I don't know that I modulate my voice. I talked about how Rabbi Sokoloff was a master of knowing when to hit crescendos and then pulling back and speaking quiet. I don't do that as much as I could or as I should, and I think that my drashas would be way more effective if I learned how to do that well. A lot of the kind of the modality. I kind of stand still behind a podium. If I'm conscious of it, I'll try and move around a little more. But that's something that I feel like I could be better at. And as far as substance is concerned, I think that one of my failings is, I wouldn't say it is that when I get an idea, I find it very hard to admit when it's not going anywhere and letting go of it. If it's maybe because I thought of it and I feel a certain proprietary sense, or I like the story that goes with it. But you need to know when it's not going to work. That doesn't mean that you should delete it. It means that you should put in your file undelivered, and you'll find another way to use that Torah, or you'll find another way to use the information that you were giving, the story that you wanted to tell. The effort is never wasted. But at the same time, you also need to know when not to give it. And I'm not even talking about where something dramatic happened in the world and you can't give the drasha that you were planning on giving, right? I'm talking about where you just know that this is not your best work, and you know that the meaning that you wanted to extract from this text is you're just kvetching. So I find that hard. I find that hard to let go of. Thank God, most of the time, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given me the wisdom to know when that is the case and when it needs to be jettisoned. But that I find difficult.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. What are your thoughts on how much of your own personal life that you divulge with your congregation, challenges, struggles, so that they can see you, relate to you as a human being, grow through your struggles, alongside you, or do you feel that that's private and you have a pulpit demeanor and pulpit profile that?
I do share some things. I don't talk about my kids without their permission. I did once or twice, and one of my kids loved it, and one of them really didn't like it at all. Not that he didn't like being spoken about, but that he didn't like being spoken about without me asking him first. So I don't, and I will only refer to my wife with her permission, and only, of course, in the most laudatory terms, often in ways that play up, I don't say play up, but that highlight her wisdom relative to my buffoonery. I'll tell a story, and there are plenty of those kinds of stories in my life, so I won't hesitate to share them. I have spoken about how my wife and I met. I talked about some back issues that I was going through one Yontif, one Sukkos. I talked about the spine of the lulav, and I used the pretext, and the segue into that. The opener was talking about back issues that I'd experienced that summer. So that people found that, first of all, they saw that I was experiencing those issues because I was walking around, hobbling around. So it wasn't a secret. Second of all, that many people are suffering back issues. So it made it relatable. And third of all, everybody came over to me afterwards recommending their chiropractor or their exercise regimen, or, I have
Sarno.
Yeah, right. Or a guy in my shul who is a pain management physician who's just as long as you recognize it, I'll help you in any way. You know that it's temporary and that it goes away, and you just have to give it time. And it was a bonding experience. It was very, very helpful. So I do share, as far as my most, the darkest corners of my psyche. I don't do that. That I think is personal, is private. But but I do share aspects of my life. We are a shul of 200 something families. People, if my kid is having a meltdown at Kiddush, that's not a secret. Everyone knows my kids are the same age as the kids of the people in shul. I'm doing carpool with members of the shul, so we are, thank God, enmeshed in the community. So it's not like our lives are secrets. We don't live sort of a lifestyle in which we are completely, separated from, or living a different life from the community, and live a life that is totally foreign and unrelatable. And when we, share, and when I share something, it's not of their palette of experiences. They like when I talk about my family. They like when I talk about my extended family. They like when I tell stories about relatives, grandparents. People. So I do share.
Okay, I have two more quick questions if you have the time.
Sure.
And then I'll let you go. The first one is, what do you have an overarching goal for this time slot, that you try to achieve something in the time slot of the drasha? And as a corollary, do you have specific goals for each individual drasha?
As I said before, you have to teach Torah, right? You have to give people a way to improve their lives, or reach a better version of themselves. Sometimes it is by pointing out communal issues that need working on. Sometimes it is by addressing foibles that all of us have without exception, mistakes that we all make, and offering some way, to move past those. These are I think that's those two: helping, teaching Torah, and helping people become better versions of themselves. As far as individual drashas, on top of teaching Torah, it may be that there is that one drasha is designed to provide hope, and another one is designed to provide guidance for self improvement. These are specific drashas may address specific issues, but overall, if you were to chart what I try and do over, whether it is a year or 5 years or career or consistently, I would say that those are really that's really what it's about.
Got it. And if you had one piece of advice to give to an emerging rabbi, public speaking, drushes, what would that piece of advice be?
I taught the local kollel. I taught public speaking to them for a zman, and I put together what I call like the 10 commandments of from public speaking.
I'd love to see it.
I'll send it to you. I revised it a little bit over time, but I think that the one piece of advice that I'd give: don't be afraid to be original, but also, as I said before, try and find somebody who will, to whom you with whom you can share. That's not just true for drashas; it's true for all of the rabbanos. Right? You need another voice sometimes, an objective voice telling you, if you have situations that you want to consult with them about, that kind of thing. I think that it's very important to have, right? As Choni HaMe'agal says, "O chavrusa, O misusa," right? That's right. Absolutely, 100%. And find models of other. That's why I enjoy your. I started watching your and listening. It's great to find you'll learn from other colleagues. Unfortunately, I don't get to hear a lot of other rabbis give drashas. But even if you're learning from their mistakes, it's great to hear. Some of the best speakers that I've heard have been colleagues. I just didn't realize, wow, these guys are amazing. So
who do you look up to
today? Well, first of all, Rabbi Gelman that I work with. I only work with the best, so I wouldn't be working with one of the best rabbinic speakers that I have ever heard of any denomination anywhere is Rabbi Ruben Pupko in Montreal. I don't know if you have had a chance to speak with him, but again, sorry?
He's on my list now.
I don't think that he's written a single word down. Again, in 30 plus years, more years in the rabbin. He is funny. He speaks a lot. He talks a lot about politics, and he talks a lot about Israel. But I happened to hear him in the context of an installation drasha. His son moved here to be the Rav of a community nearby in Plano, and he spoke. And there was aside from the jokes, aside from the modulation and the emotion and everything else, there was his content was terrific. So he's a really phenomenal speaker. I studied. I know you interviewed Rabbi Steinmetz. I studied homiletics with Rabbi Lickstein in YU. I interned with Rabbi Jonathan Rosenblatt. I have had great mentors for drush. Ultimately, I've taken a little bit from each of them, and also jettisoned the stuff that wasn't working for me. But I am certainly a composite of many influences, and there are great people out there to listen to and to learn from.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, you clearly have your own style, and it's admirable. I really, like I said, it kept me awake just reading it, and so if it keeps me awake reading it, I'm sure it keeps people awake while you deliver it.
Appreciate that. Another person that you should talk to, even though he's now retired, is Rabbi Mitchell Wolberg from Beth Tefilla in Baltimore.
Yeah, okay.
Legendary orator. We actually developed something of a correspondence. I'd been a fan of his drashas for many years, and it's a mutual friend put us in touch, and now I send him mine. And I think that he, even if I say so myself, he kind of likes them. So, but also in terms of his ability to address current events, he has, and do so with style in a way that's memorable. So there was nobody like him.
Amazing. Yeah. Is there anything that you are working on that you'd like me to direct people towards? Any projects or anything specific, a website or?
I do have on the Shul website. There's a rabbi section. My sermons are up there. It's shaaretefilla.org. SHAARETEFILLA.org. There's a whole rabbis section, and then there's rabbi sermons, and my sermons are usually posted up pretty quickly. And certainly, I think by Monday, they're posted up after Shabbos. And anybody who wants to can reach me at rabbi@shaaretefilla.org. Right now I'm already working on Shabbos Hagadol. I will say that, but still a little early. Yeah.
I'll just end with a little bit of shvach for you. I loved how you have the Shabbos Shuva Drasha was about giving advice.
Yeah.
And it was amazing to me how, it really was a confluence of two worlds of there's always the the school of thought about it should be lumdish versus it should be musar, and that confluence where it was like it was a perfect mix. I just felt you balanced the two very, very well.
Thank you.
It was really impactful.
That's exactly what I was going for.
Well,
thank you.
I think you hit the nail on the head, so in my opinion. There's a secret the great public speakers know. Did you know there's a method for cutting straight through to an audience's heart, grabbing their attention and holding it, and making a memorable impact with your presentation? The best speakers in the world utilize it, and now you can too, every time you get up to speak. Download your free Maggid method of public speaking template at maggidmethod.com, MAGGIDmethod.com. The Maggid method will teach you how to find your authentic voice, craft meaningful presentations, manage people's attention, and build unbreakable bonds with your audience. Go to maggidmethod.com and download your free copy now. You've been listening to The Maggid Method, and I'm Daniel Steinberg. Learn more about the Maggid Method at maggidmethod.com, maggidmethod.com. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.